Star Wars, Young Jedi Knights, Trouble on Cloud City, Chapter 12. Surrounded by the bayou sounds of hoots and hums and hawks, walks that seeped from the dense marsh through the rugged walls of the shack, Jaina sat back to listen to the band's tale. The fame of Friggin' Dan and his crew had risen and fallen over the years. The fiery Friggin' himself never understood what they were doing right or wrong. All through Imperial days, the time of the rebellion, and the formation of the New Republic, the modal nodes had played their own music. Sometimes the great fanfare, sometimes the few, if any, appreciative ears. But they played and they traveled, and that's what they both did. They were members in good standing of the Intergalactic Musicians Guild and generally made a good living. Though Figrin had long-standing tradition of losing their earnings at the sabacc table. He could never resist a good high-stakes game, and more than once he lost his own instruments and those of his fellow band members, only to win them back again in his next all too brief streak of luck. For a time, they had been in Jabba the Hutt's favorite band. They had reluctantly agreed to play at the disastrous wedding of the Lady Verilyn at Mos Eisley, a point which they had been struck performing as a mere bar band in the Katina, lucky to emerge with their lives. Since then, they had moved on to planet, playing in any paying venue, from prestigious resorts to drained, dry farming communities. They had gone to Borgo Prime, where they had been the hit of the Shenko's Hive for 5 months running before a banned gambling debt had forced Figrin and his band members to leave discreetly in the night of the first cargo ship they could stow away on. They had also done a stint in the floating casinos in Mon Calamari, but the gambling tables proved too tempting for Figrin, and his own musicians finally dragged him away and had taken a booking on Cloud City. Lando's business partner, Kojan, had promised them that their new gig to publicize Sky Center Galleria would be a renaissance for them, a real comeback tour. Now, though, that had fallen to pieces as well. But that doesn't explain it, Figrin, Lando said. Kojan was my friend. You've got to tell me what really went down. Behind them, the band members continued their accompaniment on Friggin, on the fizz, a fanfare, and omnibox. The eerie music added depth to their story, making Figrin's words richer and more ominous. It's about Black Sun, Figrin said. They've got some underground for many years, but they've got a cover story now. The Black Sun lieutenants act respectable, but when nobody's looking, they set up their old criminal connections, just like Prince Shizor used to do, and Durga the Hutt, with all the other disposed kingpins. Black Sun has its clutches on weapons runners, illegal spice trade, and now gambling and entertainment industries. Figrin wiped a hand across his high, smooth cranium, knocking away tiny droplets of sweat that had collected there. That's why they're trying to get their toehold on Cloud City, especially your new establishment, Lando. Black Sun wanted a cut of Sky Center Galleria. Of course they wanted to run the place, in absentia, of course. Lando just shook his head. Kojan would have never allowed that to happen in our entertainment center, which is a perfectly legitimate place, I might add. A real family amusement center with no shady dealings whatsoever, despite what you've heard about me in the past. Believe me, Lando, compared to Black Sun, you're just an Ewok who got happy on jury juice. Thanks, I think, Lando said. But you're right, Friggin said. Kojan wasn't easily pushed around. The musicians kept playing from the corners of the hut as they had practiced this number over and over again and knew exactly what to do. Jaina wondered if they had considered writing a song about their ordeal on Bespin. Maybe it would even be a hit. Zeke nodded and rested his chin on his hands. If you're running a business like Kojan was, you'd have to be ready to stand up for hoodlums and all sort of people trying to push you around. Yeah, you get that a lot, Lando said, but most of them are cowards anyway. Kojan did his best, man, but Black Sun infiltrators popped up everywhere. You never knew who they were or where they might come after you in a dark corridor down in Port Town. Got so you had to have a wing guard escort to take you to the gambling tables and back again. Those bullies could stick your head to a carbon freezing tube or drop you in an exhaust shaft. They meant business. Lando nodded grimly. But Kojan didn't give up to them. He should have, Friggin said. He reported Black Sun threats to a couple high-level X on Cloud City, but they lost the complaint or it was misfiled. He tried again, but nothing ever was done. Finally, Kojan fired his Ugnaught crew boss when he figured out the guy was thick with Black Sun. Friggin shook off his domed head. Not long after that, Kojan took a little dive off a high balcony. Man, that guy's probably still falling. One of the musicians made a high, thin squeaking note in the instrument. You know, there's no end to the clouds in Bespin. So why'd you run, Figrin? Lando said. Where were they after you too? Black Sun's trying to get its hands into the Intergalactic Musicians Guild. They wanted us to pay triple membership dues just so they could take our cut. And man, Kojin hadn't paid us much. We only done a few gigs for him, I mean. Sky Center Galleria wasn't even open yet. We got a few tips when we played the bars in Yurith Bespin, but not enough for that kind of extortion. He shook his huge smooth head. I hate gangsters don't have budget payment plans. He continued, once Kojan died, we knew Black Sun would tighten his hold on us, apply more pressure. One time they put stinger eels in our mouthpieces and all our instruments. Zeke made a grimace of distaste. Oh, we caught the critters soon enough, fed them to one of the bar customers, and even got a big tip. We didn't dare stick around Cloud City. Too dangerous there. Yeah, Zeke said, rolling his eyes. You need to come back to a nice, safe place like this war-ravaged wasteland on Clackdorf 7. Hey, home is home, Friggin said with a shrug. Jaina felt sickened. So Kojan stood up for his morals and ethics and paid for it with his life. That about sums it up, young lady, Friggin agreed. At least we know what happened, Zeke said. Sweat drained his clothing beneath the transparent steel-on suit. Lando stared grimly across the dim hut, gazing through the propped-up window. Yeah, but we don't know who killed him or who ordered his death. He swallowed hard. And believe me, someone's gonna have to pay for my friend's death. Someone in Black Sun will have to answer for it. Guess it's high time we went back to Cloud City then, Jaina said. Perspiration tickled down her neck and her band. The band members stood up, bustled around the hut, and propped the rest of the windows, letting in a heavy, sluggish breeze drift in. The hazy light on Clackdor's Sevens grew richer in color as the sun set toward the swamp trees to the west. Outside, they could hear the burrowing sounds of millions of insects stirring in the twilight. At least sit outside for us a few minutes before you go, Figrin said. This is our nightly jam session. It'd be nice to have people listening for a change. The band members dropped through the trapdoors to emerge outside the stilted hut. They turned up on ramshackle swoops, ladders, balconies, tossing off riffs and snatching out a melody. Outside, sitting on a rock, a violent puffer turtle swelled its bladder, straining the limits of its shell flexibility, and exhaled a low bassoon note. Heavy beetles crawled up trees and clicked their rear legs together in a rattling rhythm. It's the music of the swamp, Figrin said. The symphony of Clackdorf 7. The pith evolved with music like this. Since my people hide under their domes all the time, I don't get to hear the natural music. Come on, join in. He picked up the battered, long reed jizz thrust into his mouth folds and began to play. The other band members added their own inspirations and embellishment, joining in with mood synthesizer and humming clack beatbox. They slid into tune with natural sounds and music. A hoot bat flapped overhead, emitting short sound blasts of sound that the musicians incorporated into a counterpoint to their piece. Jaina listened, enjoying the exotic tune. She never heard music like this in her life, and she knew it was an experience she wouldn't forget. She winked at Zeke. This is almost better than dry clothes, she said. Zeke flashed a grin back at her. Not quite, he said, but it's interesting. When it was finally time to go, Lando and the two young Jedi took their leave of the forlorn Biths, sitting in their rundown huts, hiding out in the middle of the swamp. You'll have an audience soon enough, Figrin, Lando said softly. Once we take care of Black Sun, you can come back and pay your heart's content. I'll even double your wages for the first week. Figrin raised a big knuckled hand. Just make sure you've an open sabak table for me, Calrissian. The band kept playing as their unexpected visitors turned to leave. What? You want to lose all your wages again? Lando said over his shoulder. I always win 'em back, Friggin answered, waving goodbye. The band's melody turned sour and skeptical at these words, and Jaina sensed that Friggin's companions didn't have much confidence in their leader's gambling prowess.